name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I will have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe that they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today, we have John Baltisberger, the kaiju poet. He's an author who's released books such as Blood and Mud and War of Dictates. He's a poet who released The Configuration Discordant and a publisher owner, along with his wife, of Madness Heart Press, which has published works by Lucas Mangum and Susan Snyder. Lucas did Mania, and Susan Snyder did Encyclopedia Sharksploitanica. That is an awesome name. I haven't had the opportunity to talk at length with John, so I'm looking forward to bonding over our love of horror. John, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's an honor. I'm absolutely happy to be here.
So, what I typically ask my guests is what their history with horror is, specifically horror movies, but also just horror in general, just growing up, reading, playing video games, that sort of thing.
So, so it's interesting, right? Because I got my start in horror through theater. I could go into various plays and why they're borderline horror, but specifically, I was in a Clive Barker play. And so I was like, okay, I'm doing a play by this guy. I should check out some of his other stuff. Oh, he has movies. Cool. My 16-year-old butt's going to sit down and watch Hellraiser. What is this? Maybe my first solo trip into a horror movie was Hellraiser.
Wow, that is a deep, deep. I don't know that had to have caused some issues.
And I was gonna say it's been weird boners ever since. Um, so so I've always been more of a book guy than a movie guy. I love movies. Don't get me wrong. I love watching movies, scary movies, action movies, kung fu movies. But so I got started with Hellraiser and just kind of fell in love with slashers
Mhm.
specifically. Uh, Big fan of the Friday the 13th franchise, and my wife, who I've known for 20 years now, really loves supernatural ghost movies and possession movies. So we tend to gravitate towards those more than anything else. But then obviously, the kaiju poet, I throw down on kaiju movies like there's no tomorrow. When I've had a really bad day at work or I'm just frustrated and beat up, I'll throw a 1960s Godzilla flick on, grab a beer, and like watch it in my underwear.
All right, so that's good. So you're the kaiju poet. I'm sure you're tired of explaining this, but for my audience, could you explain where this came from?
So I wrote some kaiju books. I wrote a book of poetry, The Configuration Discordant, and the way it works is that there's 100 poems in that book in different formats, and and they're divided by theme, right? So 25 of them or so are Lovecraftian. 25 of them or so are like slasher, serial killer themed, and then in the middle, I have 25 roughly poems that are a story about three kaiju converging on Austin, Texas, and destroying it.
Okay.
And from there, I started writing freestyling kaiju poetry for people where I was like, hey, give me a city. Tell me what sort of giant monster you want to destroy it. I'll write a piece about it. It kind of hit. I was like, man, this is something no one else is doing because it's kind of dumb,
Yeah.
but
Well, no,
it's a brand I can build. You know what I mean?
right. I was
It's,
saying yes to the fact that nobody's doing it, not that
yeah.
it was dumb.
But it's a brand that I can build on and become recognizable for. So
Mhm.
I do kaiju stuff, I do poetry, but I do a lot of other stuff as well. But kaiju poet is instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
Is my goal anyway.
Yeah. So, would you? I'm not the biggest fan of kaiju's. I just find them a bit boring sometimes. But there's been one or two that I've seen that I've kind of enjoyed, and they're more of like the '60s and the '70s kind
Mhm.
of rubber
Yeah,
costume
yeah.
sort of ones. But would you label kaiju as horror or
So,
Godzilla movies as horror?
So okay, really interesting. Kaiju movies in and of themselves, no, I don't. I think they're more action
Mhm.
than horror. Um, and that's fine. That's fine. However, the really good Godzilla movies are a straight psychological horror.
Mhm.
Godzilla 1954, which is really about, Japan's fear of loss of autonomy and fear of nuclear contamination from test sites after they lost the ability to say no to nuclear tests off their islands.
Yeah.
Godzilla 1984, Godzilla Returns, which again, these are all three of the movies I'm mentioning right now have nothing like there's no other monster. It's just Godzilla. There's no giant fight scenes. The army can't do anything about it. It's this unstoppable force that cares nothing for humanity. It's nearly Lovecraftian, but at the same time, it's very clearly about humanity's own self destruction and the socioeconomic forces that are ripping primarily Japan apart.
Mhm. Okay.
I think the really good kaiju stuff is horror, but the lion's share of kaiju stuff is just action.
Action or sci-fi.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so you kind of came into horror with Clive Barker and Hellraiser and kind of slashers. Did you continue that, as you aged, or do you still watch slashers, or if you kind of left that behind, or?
No, I still, man, I'll watch a slasher as soon as I can get it on my TV screen, man. I sometimes feel bad. I get into arguments with people because I feel like people take stuff way more seriously than I do sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, where I'll watch a movie and I'll be like, "Oh, that was a fun time." They're like, "Oh, but it was terrible in this, and this way." And it's like, okay, but it was a movie about a dude in a mask cutting sorority girls up. Like, how much did you really expect out of this movie? Did you
Right.
go see a kung fu movie? And go, oh, it was unrealistic. They were flying. Yeah, that's the genre, dude.
Yeah, there's a certain conceit that you have to give with movies, this horror movies specifically.
let me just because I want this to be very successful. I want your show to be successful. One of the best ways to do that is controversy and
Okay.
starting a scandal. I hate Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm gonna start a fight.
Gauntlet thrown down. Okay. All right. So explain. What's the reason behind
You're gonna
this?
be unable to absolve me of my sins at the end of this show, man. You're like, I saw you were reaching for the hang up button there. Uh, so I didn't see the original Chainsaw Massacre until like last year. I had
Okay.
seen remakes. I had seen the revival movies, the more recently made ones, and again they were fine. There was nothing terrible about them. Or, I mean, there was nothing terrible beyond what they were. Right.
Mhm.
Then I watched the original, and it's just like I hate all of these people, like all of the survivors, all of the family. Like there's not a likable character in the thing.
Okay.
And so like sometimes you get to the point where you're just like, all right, I can't wait for these fucking teens to die when you're watching a slasher. But then you're like, the killer's cool, right? Jason's cool.
Yeah.
In 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 Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 at least, it's just like I don't care about these teens. I want them to die. But like the family's super obnoxious. And so I didn't enjoy that. But what I do like about it is it's completely different
Mhm.
than Halloween and Friday the 13th. It's a completely different feel. It's a completely different atmosphere. It doesn't feel the same as the other slashers, and I do appreciate it like that.
Yeah, I can agree with you that in slasher movies, when the survivors suck and you don't care about them, it kind of takes away from it, and then it does lead to this kind of weird thing where you are rooting for the killer, and that can sometimes feel off-putting. But I don't think I've ever met anybody who hasn't liked the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I saw the remake with Jessica Biel.
Yeah.
And Jessica Biel's abs first.
Yep. No, the
But
same. Same.
and I enjoyed that one. And then it wasn't until a couple years later until I saw the original. And the original seems just dirty and grimy and just like nasty. And it was one of the reasons why I didn't originally want to move to Texas. So it didn't work for like Texas's tourism board.
Well, that's fine. See, I 100% I believe a lot of people feel the way I do, but they're afraid to admit it in Texas.
I think you may be the only person who feels that way.
I'm an iconoclast. What can I
Yeah,
say?
yeah. No, but I try to let people have their opinion. You know, you're welcome to your opinions and all that. And I'm not like this big stand for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it's a great movie. In fact, our friend Zach just watched it within the pandemic, so within the last year or so, and he actually loved it. So I think you have some screeching coming on in your future.
Is that? I mean, unfortunately, Zach lives close enough to me that he can just come to my house and like egg it
Yeah.
if he hates my opinion that much.
Well, the funny thing is, like, I told him, like, I'm a huge Michael Myers Halloween
Hmm.
fan, and he had never seen the original, and I was like, he wanted to see it with me. I'm like, I'm not seeing the original with you. All you do is talk through movies and talk shit about them, and I'm not precious about a lot of things, but I am precious about this movie.
I won't watch movies with my father-in-law for the same reason.
Yeah, he talks through them and all that,
Oh
and
my god, he is incapable of not talking through a movie, and if I haven't seen a movie before, I like enjoying it. Like I like to watch the movie, right?
yeah,
And my wife and I watch movies together, and we joke around and we talk about it while we're watching it. But like my father-in-law will just want to have a different conversation,
uh-huh.
unrelated to the movie
Oh man,
during
okay.
this. Just like why are we talking about the post office right now, my dude?
Oh man, that would be very frustrating. I understand, like, when if it's a group movie. I used to have movie nights pre-pandemic in my house, and we'd have a bunch of people over, and we just like bust on the movie, and we're watching a bad movie on purpose, kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000 or
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
That's one thing, but just like going over your grocery list while the movie's going, I would probably have to leave the room.
Yeah. I have before. It's too much for my sensibilities. So I feel you.
All right, so John has come on today to confess that he has never watched the movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari from 1920. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You are the first person to do a black and white movie with me, and this is the oldest movie, and arguably a lot of people have said, including Roger Ebert, the first horror film ever. So I'm not sure if you knew that when you picked it, but yeah, I was really excited to talk about this one. And what I ask my guests is, why do you think that this particular movie passed you by? I mean, it could be that it was just it's a silent film from 1920. You know?
I love silent films, especially silent horror films.
Okay.
Like it's a fascinating genre. Um Nosferatu is one of my favorite movies.
Hell
Um
yeah.
and again, like older black and white movies, Gojira, again, one of my all-time favorite films. Um, so I think it's one of those things of like, I need to watch this movie. I need to watch this movie, but I also really want to play this video game, or I also really want to watch Jet Li no shadow kick a guy out a window right now. So it's one of
Yeah.
those things where I think you have to you have to kind of prepare yourself for a black and white silent film in a way you don't have to prepare yourself for a lot of other films, if that makes sense. So it's just one of those things that I never put aside the time to do.
In this day and age, watching a silent movie it's a commitment. It's a time commitment. You have to like put down your phone, which is so hard because I'm addicted to my phone. And you just have to like focus on this movie. And luckily, this one was only like 77 minutes or something like that. But I caught myself looking at my phone and then missing a title card. So I had to rewind it, you know. Whereas in movies that, regular movies with sound and all that, you can just be on your phone and still listening, you know.
Yeah.
So also, I don't know, I think you saw it on YouTube, right?
Yep, I watched the. You sent me a YouTube where they had like recaptured the original film tint
Okay.
and like remastered everything to be as close to the original production as possible, and that's how I enjoy watching things the way they were intended the first time at least.
Yeah, and I saw it on Shutter, which has a 4K restoration, which I don't know if it's the same thing that you watched, but I think I remember the link that I sent you. The film was a little bit, it was a lot darker than what's I saw, and
Hmm.
that lends itself to being spookier because it was more like ethereal, like they were kind of floating in space. At least in silent movies that I've watched that haven't been restored.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really love silent movies as well, but I haven't seen them recently. So I was really glad when you chose this one.
Yeah, it was I am, I gave you, I think I told you to ask me to choose like three of this giant list, and I chose three, and then also was like, but also this movie. Uh, so, so
Yeah.
I'm glad we came to this movie as well because I think it is important, and I think it is not at all what I was expecting, which is a
Okay.
lot of fun. Like, uh, for 100-year-old film to throw a curveball like that in so many different ways was really really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got Shyamalan.
Yeah, yeah, I said that to my wife several times, in fact.
Yeah. All right. So, because how old this movie is and the kind of the importance of it, I did a little bit more research and I went on a couple different websites, IMDb, Wikipedia, um, movementsandfilm.com, and a couple others here. So, I kind of just wanted to have some good information for us to go over. So, The Cabin of Dr. Caligari was made in 1920, directed by Robert. I don't speak German, so I know the, but I think the W's are V's. Do you have any? Do you know anything about that?
It's funny because that is the case in Hebrew, but I don't believe it's the case in German. I think that's an accent thing.
Okay, so it is just in W's. Okay,
I believe so.
I'm going to mess him up anyway. But it was directed by Robert Weine, who also directed Hands of Orlok and a ton of other silent films. But Hands of Orlok is another horror classic that I want to see that I haven't seen. And it was written by Carl Mayer, who did The Haunted Castle from 1921, and Hans Janowitz, who did The Head of Janus from 1920, and a bunch of other movies, starring Conrad Veidt as Cesare. Conrad Veidt was also in Casablanca and The Man Who Laughs, and Werner Krauss as Dr. Caligari, who he was in a bunch of other movies, none that really English audience would really know. And it was considered the quintessential work of German expressionist cinema, which included films like Nosferatu, like you were saying, which was directed by F.W. Murnau, and also Metropolis from 1927 and M from 1931. Have you ever seen either Metropolis or M?
I have not. Again, Metropolis is one of those movies where I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to watch that.
Yeah. Same thing. Same here. I have it on like several different platforms. I think I bought it digitally. It's like on YouTube for free, and I think it's on Shutter, and it's like on Amazon, and it's on all of my to watch lists, and I
Yeah,
just haven't
yeah,
watched it.
same.
But I'm looking forward to it. But M is an amazing movie with Peter Lorre. And Metropolis and M were both directed by Fritz Lang. It tells the story of an insane hypnotist who uses a somnambulist who is a sleepwalker to commit murders. The film features a dark and twisted visual style with sharp, pointed forms, oblique and curving lines, structures and landscapes that lean and twist in unusual angles, excuse me, and shadows and streaks of light painted directly onto the sets. And we're going to talk about those more as we get along. But the film's design was handled by Herman Worm, Walter Ryman, and Walter Rohrig, who they all recommended a fantastic, like graphic style over a naturalistic one. I kind of wanted to know. I've known the term German expressionism,
Hmm.
but I didn't know what it meant, so I looked it up. And this is from Movements in Film. As the name suggests, German expressionist filmmakers used visual distortion and hyper expressive performance to show inner turmoils, fears, and desires of that era. German Expressionism reflects the inner conflicts of its 1920s German audience by giving their woes an inescapably external presence. By rejecting cinematic realism, Expressionist films showcase dramatic, revolutionary interpretations of the human condition. And I just want to say that the silent film era was from the mid 1890s all the way to the late 20s. I want to talk about the acting before we talk about the movie a little bit here.
Okay.
I know you've said you've watched silent films before, and I know that they said that the acting is like the overacting is part of this kind of German expressionism. I've seen this type of acting in silent films, in most of the silent films that I've seen.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a condition of acting, though. So you may not know this, but I was a theater film student,
Okay.
and I worked first in theater and then in film. And one of the things I kind of came across pretty quickly is that if you took a stage actor and put them on film, they overacted everything. Because on stage, you have to be as big as possible. You have to smile until your face hurts so that people in the back row can see that you're smiling at all. And on film, if the corner of your lip turns up a little, everyone sees it.
Mhm.
And so, you know, all of these film actors, all these silent film actors were stage actors. Uh, and they were told like, yeah, you're not actually going to be heard, so it all has to come from expression. And it became it was there's a great bit on Futurama where Zoidberg's uncle, it comes and he does a talkie, but he's used to silent films, and he's constantly yelling at everyone to emote and overact and freak out
Yeah.
because like it's funny, but like at the same time it was like, yeah, that's kind of how it was.
Yeah. And also, it was funny because in this 4K restoration, you could see the extreme layers and layers of makeup that they put
Oh
on these
wow.
people's faces because they have to show up.
Hmm.
Because the cameras that they had at the time was difficult for the human skin or at least white people's skin to show up on camera. So they would just pound them with like pancake mix, just to
But it looked so good on not 4K.
yeah.
It looks so excellent and haunting on on shitty cameras and TVs.
Yeah, I thought that Dr. Caligari's makeup was great, and also Cesari's makeup was great. I mean, those are the two ones that kind of had the most makeup.
Oh,
Uh,
Cesar's makeup was astounding.
yeah,
Is it it was very difficult not to laugh every time they got close on his face because it's just like whoa.
yeah. He had the guy liner before anybody else.
Right.
All right, so Caligari had its Los Angeles premiere at Miller's Theater on May 7th, 1921, but the theater was forced to pull it due to demonstrations by protesters, but not what you think why they were protesting. They were protesting. Um, the people that protested was the American Legion, and they were afraid that you would have more unemployment stemming from the import of German films into America. So they didn't have any objections about the content of Caligari itself. They just didn't want to lose their jobs. Before we get started talking about the movie, I just have to say, in doing my research, like everything is disputed. So one person says that they added this, like for example, there's a framing story, right? Like somebody says that the writer added it. Other people say that like the producer added it. And then as far as like the sets were concerned, like so many other people say this thing and that thing. So it's all, and everybody's dead. It's over 100 years old now.
Right.
So there's really no way to tell. But I just got I try to match up the information I had from it. So don't come at me. All right. So the I'm sorry, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari makes use of the frame story, or in German, it's called. Here, I want you to see this word because I saw it and I was like, I want to have a competition with John see to see if you can say this word. I'm going to put it in chat here.
It's definitely fair with me being a Polish Jew.
Okay, I'm gonna get
Ramenerzalgung.
okay. Wow, I didn't even hear an L in there. Uh, let me see here.
Ramenerzalgung.
Ramen. Goddamn.
I think I win.
Yeah, hold on. Give me one more shot. There's no Enyes in here. Okay, I'm having trouble with it. Where's the acento? I don't know. Okay,
It's fair. It's fair.
Ramen Nerzal. Oh, Jesus. Ramen Nerzal. Okay, yeah, you
Okay.
win. You win.
There's a new Ramenerzalg joint of down the street, by the way. It's pretty good ramen.
Yeah, that's probably closer than anything I was going to say. So you win that one. You won this. You won this time, buddy. The director. So what happened was the writers say that they wrote the story and they didn't have the frame story. It just had the actual story that we'll get talking about. But the producer thought that it was too weird. So here's the writers were trying. They were part of the German expressionist party or scene, and the producer wasn't. The producer just wanted to make money, so they were kind of conflicting there. And so they wrote this really weird movie, and the producer was like, "Yeah, but we need it to be commercial." So that's why they added this framing story. The director was okay with it. The writers were not okay with it. Um, One of the writers said that it was an illicit violation, a trigger warning here, a raping of our work that turned the film into a cliche in which the symbolism was lost. Um, there's a lot of symbolism in here, and we'll get started talking about it. So Francis and an sorry, so Francis and an older man, and I think that this guy looks like Abe Vigoda, if you know that name. Otherwise, I'm still old. I don't know. Are you familiar with Abe Vigoda?
Yeah.
All right,
Don't
awesome.
worry. Don't worry. You're not that old.
All right.
Pretty old, but not that
I
old.
know. I got the gray already. So they're sitting in a garden telling stories, and then a girl, played by Lil Dagover, um, walks past them, unresponsive, as in a daze. Francis says she is his fiancee, Jane, and that the story of how she got that way will be amazing. And already in this 4K restoration, there's a great score that I just kind of love. And I know we were talking about this previously. I've seen Haxon with a live accompaniment by like a metal band, and I think you said you saw a silent movie with a live organ or something.
A live orchestra, yeah.
Okay, what movie was that?
Nosferatu at a
Oh hell yeah,
Nosferatu Fest,
that's right, that's right, that's.
2019.
I love seeing silent films with an accompaniment. Like I even seen like Charlie Chaplin films that had like a orchestra as well. It just adds so much to it.
What style of music was the 4K set to?
Like classical, but like it did a little bit of like they had a lot of strings and drums and flute and stuff like that.
So when you're watching a silent 1920s film, especially a horror movie, especially a German horror movie, right? You think classical. You think
Mhm.
organ, classical. You think uh the version I watched was set to jazz. Like Pink
What
Panther jazz.
of the Doctor the Cabin of Doctor Caligari?
Yeah.
Wow.
And combined with the kind of bizarro abstract set pieces, it was perfect. And like I told Desiree, I was like, my wife, I was like, I was not expecting jazz, but then I was like, oh wait, the 1920s, yeah, jazz was definitely like a thing.
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know if that was the original music that accompanied this movie or not. Who knows? You
It was such a hammer blow to my expectations
know.
of what I was going to
You're like,
experience.
hey, we're getting into this now.
Yeah, for sure.
So Francis says it all started when a carnival came to town, to his hometown of Hostinwall, and then we go into this flashback. And I think it's important to note that in the frame story, we're in like the regular world. Like it's just it looks like 1920s, like
Right.
Depression era thing. But when we go into this flashback, that's when all this German expressionistic like set pieces come into play.
Hmm.
And so like we're in his mind, we're in his retelling of it. And I never caught this the first time I watched it, but it comes into play later. Francis and his best friend Alan, together with Jane, go to the carnival for fun. And they're like hyped for this carnival. Like they get this letter and all that, and they're like, what his one friend's like, let's go. And I could just imagine like in 1920 or whatever, wasn't shit to do in your small town or village. And they're enticed by an older showman played by Werner Krause, calling himself Dr. Caligari, to enter his tent to see his amazing sleepwalker, Cesare, played by Conor V, who has apparently been asleep for 25 years and under Dr. Caligari's command is about to awaken. And I just wanted to ask you if you noticed anything with Dr. Caligari's appearance. Does he look familiar to you in any way, as far as another character in not horror but like pop culture?
He reminded me of two people. The Penguin.
Exactly.
Yep, Penguin, and Ebenezer Scrooge.
Which version, or just in general?
Just in general, just
Okay.
obviously, I think most versions have Ebenezer as like this kind of skeletal, gaunt figure, but that I don't know why. Old man in a top hat just gives me that those vibes.
Yeah, but definitely the penguin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, like Burton is one of the most like recent directors who's kind of taken that German expressionistic style and made it his own with Batman from '89 and also Edward Scissorhands. You know, it looks very much like Metropolis.
Yeah,
But yeah, so when I was watching this, I was like, "That's fucking Penguin."
yeah.
I just thought it was
That's
pretty cool.
that's DeVito's Penguin.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, which is funny because I can almost always tie various Batman villains and modern day film characters to older. For instance, there's an interview with Tom Waits early in his career that I watched, and I was like, "Oh no, that's Heath Ledger's Joker
Okay,
right there. That's him."
really. So you kind of modeled it off of that.
Absolutely. Obviously, we can't ask the man, but absolutely. And
Yeah.
then Captain Barbosa from the Pirates of the Caribbean is hands down Long John Silver from the old TV show.
Okay.
One
So
for one.
Captain Barbosa is that? No, that's not Jack Sparrow. I was thinking.
That's
Okay.
Jeffrey Rush.
Okay. Yeah. 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 And it's funny you say that because Conrad Veidt, who plays Cesare, how do you pronounce? How are we pronouncing it here? Caesar. Let me just
Caesar,
say
yeah.
Caesar. In this movie, also played the main character in The Man Who Laughs,
Who
which is a
is
silent film, which is what they Bill Finger and Bob Kane modeled Joker after.
right? Yeah, yeah,
It all comes together, man. Batman's and everything.
yeah. Obviously,
Yeah.
he is the knight.
Oh, also, I don't know if you noticed it, but he's such Dr. Caligari is such a hipster before hipsters were around because he had no lenses in his glasses. He
Did
was
he
just
not?
no, he was just rocking them for the for the.
Well, okay, but is that because he was super cool, or was it because whenever they filmed him, the light would bounce off his glasses and ruin the film?
No, he's just super cool.
Oh no, that's fair. That's fair.
And he also had Mickey Mouse hands.
I
He had,
did I did comment. I was like, hey, look, Mickey Mouse gloves.
yeah,
That's pretty sweet.
so after some people enter the tent and sit down, Dr. Caligari opens a vertical cabinet shaped like a mummy sarcophagus, and we see Caesar is a gaunt young man who wakes and steps forward in extreme slow motion. I thought this was a great scene, great acting by Conrad Veidt when he was waking up. Like this was like I felt like he had been asleep for decades. It was just like the slow moving of his eyelids and all that. I just thought it was great acting. Supposedly, he spends his life sleeping in the cabinet and is able to predict the future when awake. Caligari brags that Caesar can answer any question whatsoever. When Alan asks Caesar how long he has to live, the answer is that Alan will die before dawn tomorrow. This unsettling prediction cuts their fun short, so Alan, Francis, and Jane go home. And I was thinking we only get one question. He can answer any question, and then as they're leaving, the crowd kind of rushes. But I wanted to hear other questions and other answers.
Well, okay, so the funny thing to me about that scene is immediately after the two guys are talking and they're both like, "Hey, I'm going to marry that lady. No, I'm going to marry that lady. Who's she going to choose?"
Yeah.
Um and like why was his question, "When will I die?" Why wasn't his question like, "Hey, is she going to choose me?"
Oh
It's
yeah.
obviously top of mind for him. Like I don't know, like it's always very like whenever you see a fortune telling thing, that's almost always one of the questions they ask so they can set up the tension of the murder or death. But realistically, people don't ask that question.
Yeah. I don't want to know that. I don't want
No,
to know when I'm
hell
gonna
no,
die.
back off.
Damn it. There's a short story that I remember reading, and I wish I remember the name of it or the author, but it was a woman who wrote it, and it was about like a world in which you knew exactly when you were going to die, and you could find out. And this couple, one of the couple, found out when they were going to die, and the other couple didn't want to know, and they didn't tell each other. Or if you found out and you didn't tell your wife, and your wife didn't want to know, so you lived your whole life knowing when you were going to die, and they lived their whole lives, and that one person knew when the other person was going to die, and that would be like hell to me, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so why even ask that question?
I think it'd be hell for both people. Like it'd be hell to know and not be able to say anything, but also be hell like, "Hey, what you doing?" "Oh, I'm just making sure life insurance is up to date." "Why? What's
Yeah,
what you doing there?"
I would be the other. I'd be the opposite way. I'd be like, "Hey, is it today?" And they'd be like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm not wearing my seatbelt then." You know, like fuck it. You know?
Okay, guess I get to do heroin today. Not gonna OD. It's fine.
Hell yeah,
Don't
exactly.
don't worry about it, bro.
That big biker over there. I'm gonna go push his bike over. He can't do shit to me.
Now,
I don't have
th-
superpowers,
I
right?
was
I'm
gonna
still gonna
say
get my ass beat.
they may know the date they know maybe when they unplug your life support.
Yeah, that's true. Fuck, I didn't think about that. All right, I'm gonna reel it back. I'm gonna reel it back a little
Real,
bit.
just, real back just a little though.
So that I got a question for you. What would you ask somebody who can uh, quote unquote tell the future? I don't know. I was thinking about that, and I'd be like, at that time there was no lottery, right? So you can't be
Right.
slick with it and ask for the winning numbers or anything. I'd be like, am I going to lead a good low? Even like that, like if I ask, am I going to leave a happy life, and he says no. If I hadn't asked the question, I probably would have lived a happy life.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the funny thing is he can't tell the future. The only thing he knows is whether or not he's going to kill you. but but if I was going to ask anything, what I might do at this point in my life is ask like, will my daughter succeed in college? Now, because college isn't for everyone.
uh,
And if it's not for her, fuck it, do trade school, become an artist. Like don't like let's not waste our money and time on college.
yeah,
Now, if the answer is yes, like sure, like I'll spend all of my mass wealth as an indie horror author on spending my daughter to college.
yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know, man. I'd be like, hey, am I ever gonna find like that pair of lost shoes I found I lost or
Yeah,
something?
it has to be something that is not going to ruin like knowing the answer can't control your life, so it has to be kind of a smaller question.
Yeah, but I agree with you. He definitely should ask about that. The girl.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it's
but
up in the air.
but you brought up a point that I'd never realized, and I want to talk about it later. But it's about the motivations of Caesar in killing, in in doing his kills. So let me move on, and then
Okay.
we'll get back to it. So Jane is particularly affected since at that time she was Alan's girlfriend, although she knew that France was also in love with her. And this is when you were saying that they at the end of the night they like left each other and they're like, hey,
Hmm.
let's let her decide and then but still remain friends.
Which is
Uh,
definitely how it really works.
yeah, I was about to say that's like a romantic. That's like the plot for every romantic comedy in the 2000s, you know. And I noticed here that they were doing a lot with shadows, shadows painted on the settings, but also shadows of the characters themselves, and I thought that was really cool. After night comes, we see inside Alan's room the shadows of Alan and his killer fighting on his bedroom wall. Alan is found murdered the next morning. Francis goes to tell the police after he realizes that Caesar's prophecy has come true. Suspicion turns to the eerie sleepwalker, Caesar, and his strange handler. So, one thing here, this is where I wanted to talk. So, you said that the only thing that Caesar could predict was whether or not he was going to kill you. Because we're not privy to any of the other questions that were asked, do you think that the Dr. Caligari was only using Caesar to pick his next victims?
So it's it's hard to go into my supposition without also going into the big reveal at the end. But
Okay.
it sounds like Caligari's motivation was simply to kill, right? And we know Caesar had, in the context of the story, at least Caesar has no willpower of his own.
Right.
So the question is like, why was he answering at all? How was he answering? How was he choosing the answers? Now, this is German impressionist absurdism, so like you have to like suspend some of that shit.
Yeah.
But the answer is, especially since this is almost a dreamlike sequence, he only answers one person, and that is the person he's going to kill.
Yeah, that's true because we are in a flashback, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, if he wasn't there, that kind of makes sense, right? Because if they left, he wasn't there for any other questions, so he wouldn't know whatever the questions are.
yeah.
All right. I'm gonna let that one go. Apparently, they knew about plot holes back in the 1920s. So Francis went to the police, and he's kind of telling them what happened, and I just thought it was funny because he's like monologuing for like a minute, and we don't get any title card.
None. None at
And
all.
it's kind of like the old like skits, like I think on Mad TV or even like on Family Guy or any one of those things when they're making fun of silent films, and they're just talking like going on and on and on, and then the title card just says "Hey" or whatever. It's exactly it. You know, they had it on point. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
So before the police do anything, an attempted murder of an old woman takes place, throwing the town into panic. Back at Dr. Caligari's wagon, we see him feeding gruel to Caesar as he sits in a coffin. So if he's feeding him, he needs sustenance. So he needs to remove that sustenance. So Caesar does shit. So he does need to be let out of his coffin to shit. And I just think that's I don't know how to take that scene. Is he awake shitting?
So, okay, there's a really this made me laugh super hard. They show Dr. Caligari doing his calling, right? Where he's like, "Come in and see this." He's been asleep for 25 years without 23 years, I believe, without pause, and for the first time he'll awake. And he gave that same spiel 2 nights in a row. Sir, he was awake last night.
Right. And the same people they heard last night were there today because they ain't got
Yeah.
shit else to do.
This is Germany in the 1920s. There's
Yeah.
nothing to do except watch this dude wake up once a day,
You-
which that's not impressive. I do that.
yeah, you could lay in a coffin if you wanted to. Who the hell is Caesar? Caesar ain't nobody.
Yeah, that's just what millennials do nowadays.
Yeah, I could shit after eating gruel. That's nothing.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you people? Oh,
When police knock at the wagon asking questions, they're shown Caesar inside the coffin, and Caligari protests that he doesn't ever leave the coffin without his permission. I wanted to go back here because we didn't talk about the attempted murder on the old
yeah.
woman. So the person who did the attempted murder, do you remember his motivation?
I don't. I remember why he stabbed her in the side with a knife, or tried to stab her in the side with a knife. I don't remember why he was mad at her though.
Yeah, but he said that he wanted to kill her because he knew her or something, and he was trying to make the murder look like the
The
murder,
other two murders,
like the
yeah.
other two murders. Okay, I thought where this was going was that they were going to say that Dr. Caligari hired him to kind of do that murder to try to draw suspicion off of. That's where I thought where it was going, but I think that's like mid 2000 CSI that I was thinking of, not so much like 1920s Doctor a Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. But at some point, a common criminal. Okay, yeah. So at some point, a common criminal confesses to the attempted murder of the old lady. So the police are back to investigating Alan's murder only. Francis, along with Jane, keep investigating Caligari and Caesar. Caligari then orders Caesar to kill Jane. Caesar creeps into Jane's bedroom, and as he lifts a knife to kill her, she screams and faints. And I really liked this part where Caesar is approaching her bed because it's a very ominous walk, and it reminded me of Nosferatu.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, the kind of like slow, like jilting walk. It was pretty cool.
What I liked about that scene is it had the trope, the cliche of a beautiful woman stopping her purity and beauty act as a shield against violence. Because that's how not how the real world works. But there's that clear moment where he's like, "Oh no, wait, I can't kill this beautiful woman. I have to steal her," which is the thing that ends up driving her insane.
Right. And what's funny is like last week I did Zombie with Zach,
Hmm.
and in it that was like in the 70s. I don't remember 79, I believe. And in that one, there's multiple scenes of women like being confronted with their death and like fainting or being immobilized, and it's like this is present in the earliest recognized horror film, and it's present now to this day. Like I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, this movie was in '79, but since then, I mean, it happened in the '80s and the '90s and 2000s. It's still happening. It's kind of whack. It needs to stop.
I I have a ongoing complaint of in horror movies of people not doing things. Um or it's like, look, will it work? Probably not. But are you not going to at least try to kick the ghost in the nuts? Like at least make the effort. It's all I ask. The Ring. The Ring, I want to say the Ring, not the Ring, the Grudge, like the Grudge Part 3, like the people who are being attacked by Sadaka, no, whatever the ghost name is, they
uh,
like fight back. Does them no good, but at least they try.
yeah, I get what you're saying, but maybe kicking somebody in the ghost nuts isn't the thing
It's
because
the answer, Miguel. It's
because
always
they're
the answer.
literally it's ethereal. There's nothing there.
It's better than just going my vapors.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe kicking Jason in the nuts. I think they did that. I think
They,
they
I
did
am
that. Like, yeah,
sure, I am sure that they
Halloween.
have.
Yeah, I think that was like part 7 or something like that. But anyway, I catch your drift. Yeah, that's the whole running upstairs thing as opposed to running down or running out of the door. Um, but my wife had something about that. There's some psychological thing, and I'm going based off of her, but she did her research because she was on an episode that hasn't been released yet. But there's some psychology of cavemen when being confronted by like wild animals or whatever, jumping up into a tree to get away from it, so that the higher level, and so like running upstairs in your lizard brain is like where the safety is.
Hey, I'll kick a bear in the nuts. I will
Like,
die, but
yeah,
I'll
you're
do
gonna
it.
die. Yeah, just
I'll
for
die.
fun.
No, like if a
Oh,
bear's attacking me, not just
also,
like
like if it's 2 years before Caesar said you're gonna die, you're good.
exactly.
Up.
I'll spend 2 years in the ICU. I'm not saying I'm gonna go break into the local zoo, sneak into the bear exhibit, and just go to town on a bear's dick. I'm
Yeah.
saying it's self defense,
Okay.
Miguel.
All right. All
Self
right.
defense.
Like if a bear ever tries to rob you,
Yeah,
He
like
didn't
if a
punch
bear
in the
came into my house
yeah.
and like tried to take my TV,
Like you stand your ground is what we're talking.
yeah, stand
Okay.
stand my ground with my boots.
Yeah,
Um,
you're gonna. I would shotgun a bear in the nuts, no problem.
absolutely.
So okay, he carries Jane out of her house, um, leading the townsfolk on a lengthy chase. At one point, he kind of drops her because he can't carry anymore, and then continues on running, and they're chasing after him. And unfortunately, Caesar falls from a height to his death, and it ends the pursuit. Justice for Caesar. I mean, like he was a puppet. I mean, he was a pawn in Caligari's game.
While this is all happening, I believe Alan is like, or a police chief is someone. Someone is outside Caligari's house watching him and what they believe to be Caesar sleeping.
Right. Yeah, because Alan is the one who got killed, so it's Francis. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Francis is outside the house with the police, and they're like, it has to be Caesar. So they go inside and they basically commit a no knock warrant, and they find that there's a dummy in Caesar's cabinet, and Caligari has fled. Although, if we're talking an old man who was built like the penguin, I don't know where he's running off to. He's an old man. You can catch him at any point.
It's like when a toddler runs. Where are you go? Like, what's your plan?
I'll,
Penguin?
I'll trip a toddler, no problem. I don't give a
He's
fuck.
trying to get to Gotham.
Yeah, fuck them kids. All
I don't think I'm gonna invite you over, Miguel.
right.
Look over, you're just beating up my daughter.
I mean, no, I will. Let me just stop right there. No, I will not beat up your daughter, John.
Not even for money.
No, well, I mean, if you pay me for it.
Okay.
All right, I'm industrious. So Francis goes to a nearby insane asylum to. Oh, so he was following Dr. Caligari, and I believe he sees him go into the building. And Francis goes into that building, finds out it's an insane asylum. And did you notice this? That my 4K transfer, the version I saw, it said insane asylum outside, like on the sign,
Mm-hmm.
like from further out. And then when you got further in, it was in German or German. Yeah,
Oh, I
German.
didn't notice that. I saw the English version. I didn't notice if it changed to German.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Um, and they also used I think the producers were were looking at that market, the foreign market, because they spelled the cabinet of Dr. Caligari with a C instead of the German spelling with a K.
Mm-hmm.
So they were thinking ahead. Um,
I did. Does German not have a K? No, German has a K. Oh, does German have a C? Is the question I should be asking.
yeah, I don't know if they do or not.
See, interesting enough, I used to work in food and olives, and someone told me that a Kalamata is a fake if it's spelled with a C instead of a K. And I later found out that that actually only tells you which port it was imported from, because in Greek they don't have a C, so it's spelled with a K. But if it's shipped through Italy, they don't have a K, so it's spelled with a C.
Okay,
But
so
they ship through various things in the surrounding.
yeah, you're a fascinating man.
I've had too many jobs
Yeah.
for too many things.
Yeah. So Francis goes to the nearby insane asylum to inquire whether Dr. Caligari might be a patient there. The worker he speaks with tells him that he must go see the director of the Institute for Patient Information, and he's not allowed to discuss any of that. Now, keep in mind, there's probably only I don't know, 2 dozen cards, like title cards throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
So all this information is based off body language, which is incredible, that they're able
Mhm.
to do that. So when I say you have to talk to the director for patient information, it didn't say that. You're inferring.
Yeah, they kind of waved off screen and did a little hip shuffle, and
Yeah.
we took that to mean you need to go talk to the director.
So is that kind of what you did in the theater? Just like did a hip shuffle and waved
Yeah,
off?
no, that's pretty much acting. So long as you got the hip shuffle down, you're good to go in most plays.
Wow. John is now getting up and showing me the hip shuffle now. This is
Hmm.
incredible. I'll post something on our Twitter page.
I would
Thanks.
have worn pants if I knew it was going to be public, but
Okay. um, so Francis goes to the director's office, and it turns out that the director and Dr. Caligari are the same person. Um, and of course, like Francis loses his shit. Like he is like passing out, and like he has no way of. He's not playing it cool at all.
he
You
has
know,
no chill.
no, none whatsoever. So Francis gets the police, and after looking through the books and notebooks in the office, they discover a historical book about a mythical Caligari who did just what Dr. Caligari is doing now, but he did it back in 1793 in northern Italy. That Caligari used a hypnotized sleepwalker to murder people, and the director has notes to suggest he is trying to recreate those events. I thought this was a really cool. This isn't a plot twist, but like a cool thing to show that Caesar was under the control of Dr. Caligari the whole time, and Dr. Caligari is the one who's pulling the strings. And when we talk about themes from this movie, one of the themes is like double life, right? Caligari is portrayed in the main narrative as an insane tyrant, but in the frame story, he's a respected authority figure and director of the mental institution. As a result of this duality, it's possible for the viewer to suspect a malevolent aspect of him at the conclusion of the film, even despite evidence indicating that he's a kind and caring man. So you really have to decide whose version you believe, you know. And this is like a what do you call it in a literary sense? Unreliable narrator.
Hmm. I found that to be a really cool twist when they unveiled, like, I saw it coming when Caligari went to the asylum, but I thought it was a cool twist to build it. And another thing that you kind of have to remember when you're watching movies this old is that even but even though you've seen this sort of thing before, doesn't mean audiences at the time had seen it before.
Right. Yeah, it's like tropes were not tropes when they were first started. It was just a
Exactly.
you know
Just a wild ride for the audience.
right. So when the director arrives after being confronted with the dead Caesar, he goes crazy, saying he must become the new Caligari. So the staff in the institute put him in a straitjacket. His mania is manifest, and he is confined in his own asylum. At this point, the flashback is over, and that expressionist look of the buildings is gone. So we're back to like the beginning, the frame story. Francis and the man who he was telling the story to wander back from the garden to the institute patio. And at this point, I'm thinking, I forgot about this twist here because I saw this movie over a decade ago. And so I'm thinking, okay, so now we're gonna talk with. I thought like he was visiting his fiance. I forgot everything that comes afterwards. But as soon as I saw Caesar standing in the corner, I was like, oh shit, something different is happening here. Francis warns the older man not to accept one of his prophecies, for surely he would die. And Jane is there also, and when Francis asks her to marry him, she says she cannot marry someone not of royal blood. What did you think when up to this point when you first saw this?
I was, I won't say blown away, but I was very happy with that ending. With what was happening, because it was not what I expected. I didn't expect that framing story. Um, I enjoyed this twist, this Shamalian act the first time I saw it personally when I watched Shutter Island.
Hmm.
And that's, I turned to Des and I said, "Hey, Remember all of those movies we've seen? Well, here it is. And it's very cool to see that first stint into haha, the narrator was insane the whole time.
Yeah. So
Um
then, so
yeah.
down the stairs comes Dr. Caligari, and Francis quickly gets in a scuffle with him. Francis is grabbed by the staff and taken upstairs. And this is where Dr. Caligari comes to the conclusion that Francis is a maniac, and that his mania is caused by his delusion that Dr. Caligari himself is, in fact, the mythic Caligari who would wander from town to town with Caesar killing townsfolk. So the twist ending reveals that all of the flashback is actually Francis's delusion, symbolized in the film by the distorted buildings and the landscapes. Francis, Jane, and Caesar are all inmates of the insane asylum, and the man that he calls Caligari is the asylum director. The director, after this revelation of the sources of his patient's delusion, says now that he should be able to cure Francis, which, okay, that's not.
Lobotomy.
Oh, fuck. I didn't even
Yeah,
think
it's a
about that.
lobotomy, bro.
Yeah. So,
1920s Germany. It's not therapy.
so this was that twist that you were talking about. It's like I was like, oh shit! Like,
It's really good. Like it's very well done too, I thought.
yeah, there. If you're not paying attention, which like the first time I saw it, I didn't pay attention to it. You don't notice that in the beginning, it wasn't a jarring scene change
Mm-mm.
from the beginning because the beginning was so plain that you're just like, oh, we just didn't see a lot of that
Yep.
stylized setting. But when you look back at it, like oh, like they were putting all these little seeds for you to find, you know. And I just thought it was these just really cool.
Yeah, I agree. Um, One thing I do want to address, Desiree and I were 100% sure that Caligari was molesting Caesar.
Okay,
Um,
cite your
and
sources.
when they bring Caesar into Caligari's office in the flashback within the framed story,
Uh-huh.
your audience won't be able to see this, but Caesar's response is
A look of glee.
a look of sadosexual psychotic glee with like hand wringing and like lick lipping. It's exactly how I get in the mood to make love, and so I think that's how he what he was doing as well.
I mean, I got horny just watching you do it, so
Yeah,
I can
no,
just
for sure. It's a
I
real
can just
yeah.
imagine being in the same room as you. You know,
Oh, it's impossible to keep your clothes on when I do that. When I rub my
just
hands and cackle horrifically.
just the musk emanating from that beard of yours. Yeah,
Yup.
beard musk. So,
Beard musk. My daughter asked me the other day, said, Abba, she calls me Abba, it's Hebrew for dad.
okay.
Abba, how do you wash your beard? I was like, well, I have beard shampoo and I wash it as anyone else washes their hair. But you do wash it. Yes. Oh, thank God. Damn, baby.
Yeah. So does is Abba spelled ABBA?
ABA.
Okay. I was gonna say like, is that where Abba got its name from?
You know what? It's possible it is actually, because Hebrew's not the only language that uses Abba for dad. So
Okay. So then I just wanted to talk a little bit, and I talked earlier a little bit about it, but it's like some of the themes that I saw, and you know, as I was doing the research, some of the themes that were pointed out post this movie, because again, as I said earlier, when there's been a lot of conflicting stories about why they did this or that or who did this or that. So that's the same thing with the themes and interpretations. I think a lot of people were interpreting it 30, 40 years after it came out, in which the writers had nothing, they didn't mean that, you know.
right.
But some of it was like authority and conformity. Um, Caligari shows like brutal and irrational authority by making a violent and possibly insane authority figure its antagonist within the frame story or within the actual story, not the frame story. There's also like point of view and perception of reality. Um, it I was reading this quote by an author or a historian of films named Stephen Brockman, and he said that the destabilized contrast between insanity and sanity, and hence the destabilization of the very notion of sanity itself. So I think this kind of goes with the unreliable narrator here, because we're never on sure ground throughout the whole movie, you know. And it kind of has a sense of making you feel, I don't know, feel weird the whole time. I always feel weird watching a silent film, but this movie in particular, I always felt kind of weird watching it. There's a double life that we talked about, and then the one that was a bit more. This is the one I was thinking maybe people were seeing into it more than it was actually there. Was Reflections on Post-War Germany, because this was made in 1920, so this is post World War One, pre World War Two.
Hmm.
Um, Critics have suggested that Caligari highlights some of the neuroses prevalent in Germany and the Weimar Republic when the film was made, particularly in the shadow of World War One, at a time when extremism was rampant, reactionaries still controlled German institutions, and citizens feared the harm of the Treaty of Versailles, what that treaty would have on the economy. Siegfried Krakauer wrote that the paranoia and fear portrayed in the film were signs of things to come in Germany, and that the film reflected a tendency in Germans to quote unquote retreat into themselves and away from political engagement following the war. Another author, Vincent Labruto, wrote that the film can be seen as a social or political analogy for the moral and physical breakdown of Germany at the time, with the madman on the loose wreaking havoc on a distorted and off balance society, a metaphor for a country in chaos. So I think like what they're saying there is you have this one authority figure causing havoc in all of society, and they're drawing connections to Adolf Hitler.
You know, one of the interesting things about art, right? Art and holy books is that we want to put our own spin on them based on hindsight or personal experience. For instance, like the Christian Bible. There's good evidence that the people who wrote that, when they're like, "Oh, yeah, Messiah's coming back." They meant like now. They meant like within their lifetime. However, every evangelical church group is like, oh no, they meant now, and they've done that for the last 2,000 years. Uh, and especially with like the Book of Revelations, it's a lot of people don't want to think of like, oh well, who wrote this and what was going on in the world when they wrote it. Likewise, you can say that, oh, this is about Adolf Hitler, but at the time, before Adolf got to power, he was looked at the same way we looked at Trump before he won the election. Like, look at this fucking joke. No
Yeah,
one recognized that there was actual danger or insanity there. They thought he was a punk ass bitch who wouldn't stop running his mouth. And so I think uh some of these interpretations are through the lens of hindsight as opposed to through the lens of what was happening and going through their minds as they wrote this movie.
yeah. I feel like it's film students who needed to write a thesis paper. You know,
Hey, I fully endorse your writing your thesis and finishing your college. I just don't happen to agree with you.
right, right. So that was a movie. What did you think about it?
I enjoyed the hell out of it, man.
Yeah,
I really like trippy abstract art. I'm a huge fan of absurdism and German impressionism in film. I thought and again, coupled with jazz of all things,
I think
man,
I need to see the version you saw.
the set design coupled with jazz, coupled with the kind of like offbeat story was really just like on point. It was really good. And again, there's something just so pure and wonderful about seeing things like Shutter Islands tropes and the oh, it was an insane person telling the story the whole time. And seeing those in their first iteration, that's really kind of joyful, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot of times when it's done first, it's done the best, and everything else after that is derivative of it. I saw Shutter Island when it came out, however many years ago, decade ago, whatever. I
Yeah,
don't remember too much about it, but I really enjoyed the acting. I mean, yes, it's acting, but it's kind of weird to say acting because it's like overacting. It's hamming it
yeah,
up, but that's was the style. I enjoyed the sets. I enjoyed the music. The 4K transfer that I saw was amazing. I love this movie, and it's just an important film. Like
hmm.
for the longest time, that they thought that no script had survived from it, and then in the 50s, like one of the actors said that they still had their copy from the original when they were acting, and then but he was keeping it. So when he died in the 70s, like the German government bought it, and it's now like being preserved by them in their in their museum, their national museum, and all that.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like this movie is it's a milestone in horror. Like this is for all intents and purposes, the first horror film, and it just touched off everything in the genre that you and I love. You know,
Yeah.
it was a very important film. So I just wanted to give it some of the respect that it deserves. So what we do, John, is we rate movies out of five upside down crosses. So what would you give this movie?
Oh man.
And it's just your feeling. Like I said, you could feel one way today and a different way tomorrow. So, but this is a contract, and so it's legally binding.
Okay, no, sure, 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 sure. I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. It is incredibly important. And maybe it was just the version I watched with the jazz, but the juxtaposition of black and white, dark story of murder mixed with jaunty, abstract set design mixed with jazz, it just did it for me, man.
Yeah.
At the same time, I can't give it a 5 because just after that, Nosferatu came out, which
Hmm.
is such a powerfully good movie. Um, and so like I don't want to compare the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari to modern day horror masterpieces, because it's a different thing. But I can compare it to Nosferatu in
Okay.
the same era of filmmaking from the same country. You know what I mean? So it's great. It's really good, but it's not best in class.
So is Nosferatu 5 stars for you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Five 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 virgins dangled above a cup filling with their blood that I sup from eagerly.
Hell yeah. Five. You're right. Five upside down crosses is what I should say. I'm forgetting my own damn format. All right, and I think the way I rate movies is like I figure out what is the least it could be and what's and then I work my way there. And it's definitely 4 stars. It's so important. It's so good. I think it's not nostalgia because I wasn't born in 1920s because of the importance of it and how much I love silent films and all that. I think I'm at either 4.5 or 5. I think I'm gonna go 5. It's not a. I think it's difficult to say like 5 is only for perfect movies because that's not the case. I've given plenty of movies 5s that weren't 5s, that weren't perfect movies, I should say. I think it's about a sense of how I feel when I watch it, and I felt like invigorated to be watching like it's like when you go to a birthplace of something, it's you're like, holy shit, this is where it came from. And so horror in general has given me so much joy in my life that it's like it's got to be 5. It's a 5 for me. It just based on historical factor alone. And some people will be like, well, is it good? Yeah, it's also good. You know,
Yeah, yeah, I'll agree with that.
I'm gonna give it 5.
Oh,
Uh, so what we do here, in order to, so you've confessed that you haven't watched the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Now I will be absolving you of your horror movie sin, and in order to do that, I will be assigning you 3 horror movies that are similar to this one in tone, style, era, stuff like that. And then, in order to be fully absolved, you need to see those movies and then come back on. Hopefully, we'll talk about them in some other movie. All right, John. So the 3 movies that I thought are similar in tone, style, and era for you to watch it would be Faust from 1926, and you said that you were actually in Faust. Is that correct?
yeah, I've done a stage production of Faust.
What character were you? I don't recall the
Oh, I
story or
can't
anything.
remember.
Oh, okay.
I was a fairly minor. I did a lot of extra like guard standing on the left
Okay.
style stuff. So
Okay. All right.
yeah, no one. I was not Faust or Mephistopheles, which like those are the only two characters anyone cares about.
Yeah. And then Metropolis from 1927 and M from 1931, both directed by Fritz Lang. Okay, so you can see those movies, and if you don't, then I guess you're just gonna burn in the fiery pits of hell, which of course you don't believe in, so you're fine.
Really low stakes game here.
All right, John. So now we've gotten to the plugs portion of it. So if there's anything you wanted to talk about, anything you got coming out soon, anything you're excited about, let my listeners know.
Yeah, so as we've kind of mentioned, I'm an author. I sort of specialize in splatterpunk, which is for those of you who don't know, more gory, visceral, violent horror. I have a fairly new book called Abhorrent Siren, which is a body horror, splatterpunk, extreme horror, kaiju story set in Texas. Um, I also have a few urban fantasy series. One that's extremely Jewish called Book of Zev, and one that is not as splattery or visceral, in case you have a weaker stomach, called UPD that just came out. And obviously, as Miguel mentioned, I am the showrunner over at Madness Heart Press. We publish a lot of great books through Madness Heart Press. Susan Snyder, Christine Morgan, Lucas Mangum, who is obviously a good friend of ours, but also an incredible author. And I have an anthology coming out in the near future, which has several of our friends actually. Uh, Max, Lucas, and Andrew all contributed to that. So that's
Nice.
going to be a really, really bizarre book, and I hope you all enjoy it. It's the Madness Heart Press Employee Handbook. It's coming out probably early 2022.
Okay, and so Madness Heart Press. Tell me a little bit about it, because
Sure.
that's your press. Like it's fairly new, right? Or did you like launch like in 2019 around that time?
2019, that's right. Yeah, we
Okay,
put out our first anthology in 2019. We have just under 40 books to our name now, which that's way too many in 2 years, just FYI.
that's a lot of books.
It's a lot. We don't specialize. What I want to do with Madness Heart Press is I want to create a home for books that other people are scared to try to sell. For instance, one of my favorite books we've published is a book of poetry about literary recipes. It's really bizarre, really weird, but really unique and cool.
Uh-huh.
We have a book of plays coming out. I published a book of reviews about sharksploitation movies, which if you love horror and you love sharksploitation, it's an amazing book. Susan Snyder is an
Yeah,
actual, like hand to God, a marine biologist who reviews these shark movies with so much love in her heart. Um, I
yeah.
published some
You gotta. I'm gonna be ordering that one because I
it's
was
so
just.
good.
Yeah.
And since Susan is local, I can get you a signed copy as well. So
Oh hell yeah,
we'll get you
definitely.
hooked up. You know, we publish extreme stuff. We publish more mundane stuff. Madness Art Press is about whatever I feel is good.
Okay.
It's for darker literature, and it has an imprint called a Gotta Try It, where we publish Jewish speculative fiction. And that's simply there wasn't a place. I was shopping around my urban fantasy and there was no place. There was nowhere that would take it. And so I decided to create my own press that would specialize in that and give other Jewish authors a home that they could go to.
So when you say Jewish speculative fiction, what does that entail? Is it the characters Jewish, the situations, or like what, or is it any matter of things? Any number of things?
It's a combination of things. That press is for Jewish authors,
Gotcha.
first and foremost. Second of all, I want characters that are Jewish. I want Jewish lore to be involved. We have one called The Green Children Help Out, which is about superheroes from another dimension who happen to be Jewish fighting Nazis. My series called Book of Zev is about Jewish exorcist and monster hunter. And then I have a bizarro book from Max Bauman uh, uh, called Giant Robots of Babel, which is about angels piloting mechs fighting in Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia. It's going to be rad. And
Wow,
I'm
that
also
sounds
trying to
amazing.
pull. There's an author named Kitty Nish who writes Jewish erotica, and I'm trying to get her on board to publish with us as well. So
That's amazing.
it's just trying to create a home for non-traditional Jewish literature, because most Jewish presses and most presses that do Jewish books want Holocaust literature or Bible studies. And like we need to celebrate the weird shit.
Right. Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds awesome. So then, where can people follow you, or on your socials or your website?
You can find me at Kaiju Poet. That's my Twitter handle. It's my Facebook page. It's my Instagram. It's my TikTok. Yeah, I know. Uh, and kaijupoet.com is my website where you can find all of my books and all of my socials and all of that. So, like I said, I tried to create a brand. I'm sticking with it, even if it's a terrible idea.
I love it, man. It's just it's incredible. All right, John. Thanks so much for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate it. If anybody wants to follow me, I'm at on Twitter at MHCPod. I'm on Instagram at My Horror Confessional. My email is myhorrorconfessional@gmail.com. The music you heard was by Taylor Fox. You can follow her on Instagram at the Taylor Fox. And the artwork was done by Captain Mikey, and you can follow him on Instagram at Captain_Mikey_art. All right, that's all. Thanks for joining us.